How old were you when the Nationals struggled against the Miami Marlins? Well, I can tell you this, over the last 2 years, the Nats had ultimately struggled against the Fish, but this time around, the Nationals, they go for the sweep tonight. And again, yesterday, the Scrappy Nats are back.
You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. And of course, I'm your host, Ryan Clary. You can catch me over on Twitter at RyanClary11 and as well as the show page at Locked On Nationals. Just search LO_Nationals. For all your latest Nationals news and notes, make sure to check us out over on Twitter. And of course, check us out over on YouTube. Just search Locked On Nationals. And of course, again, wherever you get your podcasts, search Locked On Nationals, and that is where you'll find us over wherever you get your pods. I should probably say that a little bit more, am I right? Later on in today's show, we'll be talking about the Nationals and the Marlins, as you have that rare 4-day series ends on a Monday. It's a little weird, but of course, the Nationals are going for the 4-game sweep. They have taken the first 3 games against the worst team in Major League Baseball, which is the Miami Marlins. So can the Nats get the sweep? We'll discuss that a little bit later on in today's show. But also in the second segment, it is a Monday. Who has been hot? Who has been not? The National Stock Report. That is where you get your latest individual performances for, again, whose stock is up, whose stock is down. We'll get you all the latest on the Nationals' individual performances in the second segment of today's show. But let's kind of wrap up the weekend here, as, again, the cherry on top was the Nationals coming back in yesterday's ball game after trailing 7-0 in the top of the 4th inning. Patrick Corbin came in that first inning and was awful in his start. It was not good. Patrick Corbin has continued to not be good for over the last few years, and again, statistically has been the worst starting pitcher in Major League Baseball over the last few years, leading the National League in losses each of the last 3 seasons. It has been a tough go for it. We all know that at this point. But the Nationals, what happened in yesterday's contest, you can't tell me that you expected that. Now, I know this Miami Marlins team is bad. And again, if you're watching the game, you go down 7-0 after the first few innings, you have to think to yourself, well, okay, the Miami Marlins still have to get outs. This is not a good pitching team right now. You're missing a NL Cy Young guy with Sandy Alcantara. You're missing Yuri Perez. And again, the Miami Marlins bullpen is not all too great. This is something where you don't really expect to win after being down 7-0, but in the back of your head, you're still thinking, well, the Marlins have to get 27 outs after getting these next, few innings here, going up against a pretty hot Nationals lineup, coming off a really good weekend. And again, the Nationals came back and they won in yesterday's contest. Now, before that, I think there's a little bit of a backstory to this, because going into this series, I was pretty nervous. When you talk about this Marlins team, they're not the best team out there. They're terrible. They're the worst team in baseball. But over the last few seasons, the Nationals, who haven't been all that great, but last season, obviously, this team was a lot better. Even then, the Nationals in 2023 against the Marlins, they were 2-11 against the Fish. And back in 2022, they were 4-15 against the Miami Marlins. This is a team that has not been good against the Miami Marlins for whatever reason out there. So when the Nationals were going down to Miami, and obviously this team has been better this year, and the Marlins have taken a massive step back with some injuries and losing some key guys in free agency, but still, you kind of expected the worst, in my opinion. Because the Nationals, again, last year, they were a lot better than what they were in 2022, but still, the Miami Marlins still had their number. So going into the series, my expectations were relatively low. And I think that's probably what the fair amount of fans kind of thought going into the series, even though we all knew that this team was a lot better than the Marlins. We have more talent. We have the pitching matchups going on our way. But I was still skeptical. Now this team is going for the 4-game sweep starting in tonight's Monday contest. And of course, you do this in the ultimate, most dramatic way possible. Starting down 7-0. Patrick Corbin coming in there, which, by the way, how much longer does Patrick Corbin have? Because I think that's starting to be a real question for the organization. We all know this. Patrick Corbin's going to be a legend. He's going to be gone after this season. And maybe at this point in time, he will probably not be a starting pitcher by midway July at this point. Just considering all things here with Cade Cavalli coming up, the way that Mitchell Parker pitched again on Saturday, having an ERA below 2 and looking the part yet again. You have to start thinking about these things. How much longer will Patrick Corbin have? Because again, giving up 7 earned runs in the first 2 innings, 6 in the first inning, or not 7 earned runs in total, but still, you understand the point. It was not a good day to be Patrick Corbin. And I think a lot of fans are probably going to start to get the pitchforks out. They don't want Patrick Corbin pitching anymore. And by the way, you probably shouldn't. But then again, the first inning, you have Jazz Chisholm Jr. hitting that grand slam. That's kind of when the floodgates open. And that's kind of when you all looked around and said, this is going to be another Patrick Corbin start. The bullpen's going to have to come in and clean it up in an ultimate fashion, by the way. After those first 2 innings, Patrick Corbin somehow kind of squeaks away clean. The bullpen comes in, saves the day, minus a Jordan Weems outing there. He didn't look all too great, but still, the Nationals got it done. And it wasn't just from the bullpen and kind of holding it down for way more time than they probably should have been out there. Nick Senzel, one of the veteran free agency acquisitions from this offseason. Not a lot of people expected Nick Senzel to be a difference maker up to this point, but so far in his limited action, he's got 5 home runs in his first few games as a Washington National. That is second most on this team right now. With Lane Thomas on the shelf, Joey Meneses is not really providing the power that we all thought he could at this point. Joey Gallo not providing the power that we thought he could. Nick Senzel has been carrying this Nats offense over the last few days here. 2 home runs in yesterday's contest, killing the baseball. This is something where you are starting to kind of turn your head a little bit and say, could Nick Senzel be kind of that surprise player for this team? Jesse Winker was that over the first few weeks. He slowed down just a tad. Hasn't been putting up his crazy numbers as he was over the first few weeks of the season. But now Nick Senzel is starting to kill the baseball. You have to start wondering, how much longer is it going to be until things turn on the Nationals' head? Because so far, all these veteran free agent guys, they have been making somewhat of a difference. I'm not going out there thinking that Nick Senzel is going to be your third baseman in the future. We all know that's going to be Brady House. But similar to what Jeimer Candelario did last year, you have to start thinking, if this guy is going to be playing like this, what is his potential for a trade deadline acquisition? What is his potential for a team looking for a power third baseman bat? And again, if you look back to our opening day series when I talked with Jeff Carr and Stephen Offenbaker from Locked On Reds, we all discussed this. They thought that Nick Senzel just needed a change of scenery and just kind of needed a fresh outlook on the game of baseball and getting an opportunity to play every single day. That's similar to what Jeimer Candelario did just last offseason when the Nationals signed him to a 1-year deal. Now you go into it with this, Nick Senzel could be turning it around because, again, he only had 13 home runs last year. And so far, before April's even over, he's got 5 home runs. And that's even after injuring his finger in the opening day, right before opening day. Right as he's warming up, hurts his finger, gets jammed, whatever it was. And of course, he's starting to turn things around for this Nationals team. And he was the key component in yesterday's game as hitting multiple home runs, driving the Nationals' power. And again, it wasn't just him. It was also Jacob Young, who will be ultimately a big talking point going forward on this podcast going forward. Because again, Jacob Young, a 7th-round pick, not that many people expected him to make the rise from a high A Wilmington last year all the way to the big leagues. But so far this season, in his limited action, playing in center field, number 1, the defense has been solid. And number 2, he's getting it done at the plate. You have to start kind of thinking things through and what this Nationals team can do down the line. But of course, you go for the sweep tonight. So we got to preview game 4 of tonight's action later on in the show. But next, let's get you a Nats stock report as we get you all the latest individual performance, who's been hot, who's been not, whose stock is up and whose stock is down. We'll discuss that a little bit later on after we tell you guys about our new friends over at DoorDash. And guys, here's what I want to tell you is that we want to make mom smile, start Mother's Day with flowers, or surprise her with gifts from the brand she loves, delivered the very same day with DoorDash. Moms are a gift, so give her the best this Mother's Day. Get gifts as thoughtful as she is with DoorDash. And of course, all you have to do is just ask yourself this question. Does mom have a sweet tooth? Is she a teeth enthusiast, a beauty connoisseur, or is she outdoorsy? No matter what she's into, you can make her smile with a fruit or flower bouquet, makeup, tech gear, workout wear, and more. Shop with savings that make her proud with the Dash Pass membership. You'll save with a $0 delivery fee and reduced service fees on eligible orders from DoorDash merchants that meet the minimum subtotal. Other fees, including services fee, apply. Terms apply. Get all your Mother's Day gifts all in one place and get 50% off your next order, up to $15 when you spend $15 plus on your next flower, convenience, grocery, or retail order now with code LOCKEDONMLB. That's LOCKEDONMLB. Order using DoorDash today. Terms do apply. Now, let me tell you guys about our old friends over at Monopoly Go. And guys, we talk about Monopoly Go. You already know that at this point, I'm a pretty competitive guy and the game is off. We got to use pause here to talk more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying, flag on the play. You already talked about that, but there's just so much good stuff in this game. Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for time tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get. Unique stickers can trade with friend to complete albums for big prizes, cool new playing pieces to travel boards with, hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton includes their own unique mini games like digging for treasures for a robot pachinko machine. There's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it now, free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. Now we get into it as we got to get into a national stock report, who's been up and who's been down. And of course, before we get into that, you guys can check out Locked On Nationals wherever you get your podcasts, including over on YouTube. Just search Locked On Nationals there. That is where you'll find your daily content for your Washington Nationals. And now let's get you a stock up. As we mentioned in the first segment, you have a stock up for center fielder Jacob Young. Jacob Young has been kind of an energizer bunny for this team over the last few games here. And as we get into it, his last 5 games, he is batting .500 with a .526 OBP, a .611 slug, and an .1137 OPS. Also in that time frame as well, he's got 4 stolen bases. And this is something I think that a lot of Nationals fans expected. But when Jacob Young is on the base path, this guy is a terrorizer. He is going to terrorize teams' pitching staffs if he can get on base. And this is kind of why in today's game, if you can have someone like a Jacob Young, he's going to be a long-term major leaguer. This is not your Alex Call, who, by the way, killed the ball in yesterday's contest, so kudos to him. But this is not going to be someone who will just kind of be your 4A kind of player. Jacob Young is a major leaguer, especially in today's game. A solid defender who can play really anywhere in the outfield, who has proven that he can play center field in the big leagues. And also, when he's on the base path in today's game with all the new rules out there, this is going to be a guy who will definitely carve out a role even when the Nationals are in the postseason. I'm not saying he's going to be your starting center fielder. That's not the plan the Nationals have for him. But being that fourth outfielder type, that is where he will be. And that is probably where he will live going forward. Now, there could be some things that pop up in his way, but as of right now, 24, 25 years old, still relatively young, still developing, Jacob Young has been a very nice surprise for this team going forward. And of course, as we saw in yesterday's game, to make it a 6-7 ball game, Jacob Young, he singled on a line drive to right fielder Dane Myers. That was a huge thing because, again, you have a fielding error there as well. But Jacob Young is putting the ball in play. He's playing solid defense. And, of course, he's stealing bases. This is kind of what you wanted to see from him. This is kind of the dream outcome if you were thinking about what could Jacob Young be. So as he continues to be this energizer bunny for the Nats, you have to think to yourself, when is it going to be at the road end for Victor Robles? When does the road end here? Because he is hurt. He's on the shelf right now. But still, as Jacob Young continues to heat up, it's not great news for Victor Robles. So hopefully Robles can get healthy. But, of course, Jacob Young has been killing the baseball, playing good defense, and terrorizing team on the base pass. So with that said, let's get you a stock down. Patrick Corbin, a 6.82 ERA on the season. Yesterday's ball game was not good. Not good whatsoever. And again, not all of it was his fault. The Nationals did have a few fielding errors there for Patrick Corbin that ultimately was not all too great to end his day. But Patrick Corbin on the season now It has not been good. 8 hits in yesterday's contest through 4 innings pitched, 4 earned runs, only 4 strikeouts. Gave up that grand slam in the first inning to Jazz Chisholm. Again, the clock is ticking for Patrick Corbin. Unfortunately, this is a guy who will always be a Nationals legend, in my opinion. I will never boo the guy. He is a legend. Game 7 winner for this Washington Nationals team back in the 2019 World Series. He will never be booed. He should never be booed at Nationals Park. But still, this is a bad pitching performance so far. This is kind of what we expected. Whatever has happened with him, the slider ain't sliding, the fastball ain't that fast, and ultimately, guys are just crushing the baseball off him as he leads the league, or he's up there in the top of the league as far as exit velocities go against. But let's get you a stock up for another pitcher who has been, again, kind of a pleasant surprise. And if you remember Mark Zuckerman kind of hyping him up early on in spring training, now you see why. Stock up for Derek Law. Derek Law has been a very pleasant surprise for this Nationals team. A very, very pleasant surprise, in fact. Over his last 8 innings pitched, he's got 12 strikeouts, only 1 earned run, only 1 walk as well in those 8 innings pitched. And more importantly, this is kind of one of those stats where you kind of look into it and say, this is going to bode well for someone who, number one, could be a trade line target for some contending team. And number two, just a really good relief pitcher. He's got a 0.56 fielding independent pitching, which kind of takes the ERA out of it, takes the kind of luck out of it, and kind of gives you an ERA from a perspective of how well a pitcher is pitching, taking away all the defense and blunders and everything. So that is a very good FIP there. Derek Law has been awesome to start this season for the Nationals team. He's had some blunders again, give up a few runs before that. And if you go back 9 innings pitched ago, Derek Law was not all too great, but ever since that kind of one blunder, he has been nails for this team. David Martinez trusts him with all his heart. And again, 8 innings pitched, 12 strikeouts in that time frame as well. And more importantly, only 1 walk. Derek Law is going to be a big part of this bullpen for the rest of the season, maybe up until the trade deadline. Maybe you see him shipped off, but still, he has been awesome for this team. You have to think that this Nationals team, they're going to be using him quite frequently because he has been a very good pitcher. As you've seen guys like Kyle Finnegan struggle, you've seen Tanner Rainey struggle a lot. Derek Law has not been one of those guys, and of course, Dylan Floro as well. So the Nationals bullpen acquisitions from this offseason, they are paying off in a huge way so far in the year of 2024. Stock down for Tanner Rainey. It could be over. It might be over, in fact. Tanner Rainey has 2 earned runs and 3 earned runs in his last 2 appearances. His fastball velocity is not there. Ever since getting Tommy John surgery, it's not working out for Tanner. It's unfortunate because, again, if you go back to 2019, I was convinced Tanner Rainey would be the Nationals closer of the future. I was convinced that Tanner Rainey is going to come in, pump 101 to 102 every now and then, have a pretty nasty breaking ball, but it just has not worked out for him. This is going to be a DFA candidate up at some point here. Tanner Rainey has not been good. And again, it's unfortunate because he's got the talent. He's got the stuff. You look at him and you're like, he fits the eye test, but as he continues to drop in velocity, as his fastball is no longer in command, as his breaking pitch is no longer breaking, you have to wonder how much longer he's got in the big leagues. And unfortunately to say, I don't think it's much longer. I think he's going to be one of the first guys dropped over the next week or so. We'll just have to see. But Tanner Rainey, it's hitting the end of the road. It's unfortunate because this is one guy who was a promising prospect for the Cincinnati Reds back in the day. You trade him. When you trade away Tanner Roark, you get Tanner Rainey back in that deal. It looked good at first. You believed in him. I believed in him, in fact, but still, it has not worked out. He has not been consistent. And again, the Tommy John surgery threw his career for a loop, so hopefully he can get back on track eventually. I just don't think it will be in a Curly W hat. Stock up for Nationals third-round pick back in 2022 out of the University of Tennessee, Trey Lipscomb. Over his last 5 games since getting the call back up from AAA, don't look now, but he's batting .500, a .579 OBP, a .563 slug. That is an 1141 OPS. Now, he's not killing the baseball. He's not really hitting for power. He has 1 extra base hit in that time frame. He's got no home runs yet, also in that time frame, but still, Trey Lipscomb has been playing some pretty invaluable defense as a whole, playing both corners. And of course, Trey Lipscomb at the plate has been getting the job done as he's getting a bat at getting a hit in every other at-bat so far, getting on base at a pretty consistent rate. I'm not still 100% sold on Trey Lipscomb as someone who will be here long-term within this ball club, as you have Nick Senzel hitting the ball pretty damn well. There's a couple other things that could be going the Nationals' way. If you have James Wood coming up in the majors, maybe you want to see Trey Lipscomb go back down to AAA and see what he can do with that. But as of right now, Trey Lipscomb, this is a big league player, man. You see as to why this Nationals team and the organization loves him. You see as to why he was competing for an opening day roster spot, even before guys like a James Wood. But now you see it. Trey Lipscomb, damn good ball player. Thank you all for making Locked On Nats your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. And of course, check us out over on YouTube. Just search Locked On Nationals there. Next, let's preview Game 4 of this Nationals Marlins series. The Nats go for the sweep tonight against, you have Trevor Rogers against Jake Irvin. We'll talk about that, of course. But now let me tell you guys about our friends over at FanDuel. And guys, it's playoff time in the NBA and NHL, and baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose, but on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all in and up that is safe, secure, and easy to use. As Jake Irvin kind of got rocked around against the Dodgers in his last start, I predict him to have a nice little bounce back tonight. So maybe you put the Nationals on the run line. Maybe you take the over on the strikeouts for Jake Irvin. I think the Nationals will bounce back tonight against the Fish and go for the sweep. So you can place a little money on the Nationals, maybe to cover the run spread. Whatever it is, bet with our friends over at FanDuel. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. Again, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Again, FanDuel.com/lockedon. Thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. And of course, the Nationals are going for the sweep tonight. But before that, you do have to go against Trevor Rogers, the Marlins left-handed pitcher, who has been probably, considering all things here, been one of the better pitchers for the Marlins this season. He's got a 4.10 ERA in 26 and a third innings pitched, 5 starts on the year, 24 strikeouts in those 26 innings pitched. But Trevor Rogers, this is someone that the Nationals have faced quite some time over the years. Again, a first-round pick back in 2017 by this Marlins organization. At one point was a promising prospect, had showed some really good movement back in 2021. But since then, hasn't really particularly looked all too great. In 2022, had a 5.47 ERA in 23 starts. Last year in 2023, it was hurt. Only had 4 starts and a 4 ERA. But this year, he's been solid, kind of returning back to form at least a little bit up to this point. But you have to kind of think to yourself, how much longer will this Marlins team struggle? Because as we know here in DC, the Nationals, they have struggled against the Marlins over the years. Can they get a 4-game sweep in on this Monday? I think they get it done. And it's not because of the Nationals offense. I think it's because of the guy that we have going on today's bump, and that is Jake Irvin. Coming off a really poor start against the Dodgers. He's got a 1.3 whip on this season. He's very familiar with this Marlins staff, being in the NL East, obviously. I think Jake Irvin's going to carry this Nationals team. We get the win tonight. You sweep them in 4 games. Then you move on and you face the World Series champion Texas Rangers tomorrow. As again, it's going to be a big start for Jake Irvin. You want to get this sweep in. You want to get back up to 500, by the way. Think about that for a second. The Nationals could be entering May right around hovering 500 on this season, going up against the Rangers in Texas against the defending World Series champion, which, by the way, the Texas Rangers, who left Washington, D.C., it's a little bit of a rivalry, in my opinion. So let's hope the Nats can get this done, because it ain't going to come easy other than that. And of course, I will catch you guys on the flip side. You enjoy Nationals baseball tonight. Have a good one. Go Nats.